Everybody, thanks for joining us today. And I'm here with Steven. We are joined by a very special guest today, Mr. John Jackson Miller, author of a lot of my favorite novels from the Star Wars franchise and others. Is the author of a brand new book set in the Batman universe, and specifically the Michael Keaton Batman universe, set between 1989 Batman and 1992's Batman Returns. So, John, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You've written a lot of stuff, and tell us about kind of your early career and how you got into writing, and what you felt like that first moment was that was just like, I've made it.
Well, I had been a comics fan since I was age 6, and my mother was a grade school librarian, so she didn't throw my comics away. She encouraged me to put them in order, and I worked my way through. Yeah, being a Star Wars fan as a kid and a Star Trek fan and a comics fan simultaneously in the 80s in particular, when all of those things really start well, at least, Star Wars sort of subsides in the early 80s. Star Trek is just getting going in that sort of middle zone there. You've got the comics world is really percolating because you've got the comic shops which are allowing you to do stories which are more serious in nature, and so it's in this stretch where you get Frank Miller, Batman, Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, Killing Joke, various other things, and then a lot of non-Batman things which are more serious. And it is sort of in that formative period there where I'm becoming more or less a professional fan, and I would go on to I was already doing my own fanzines that I was photocopying on my dad's copier, but then I would go on to edit the high school newspaper, and then edit my college newspaper, and I'll circle back to that when we start talking about Batman specifically. But after getting my journalism degree and a poli sci master's, I worked for a year for magazines for the lumber industry, running some lumber magazines. And whatever you've heard about the lumber industry, it's nowhere near as exciting or fun as you would imagine. And I lucked out because the magazine that I read, the weekly magazine that I'd been taking since I was a teenager, was Comics Buyer's Guide, which was edited by Don and Maggie Thompson up in Wisconsin. And I was down in Tennessee, and I was like, okay, I've when I saw in the back of that newspaper that they had an ad looking for somebody to run their trade magazine. That's the magazine Comics Retailer, which went to all the comic shops. I faked calling in sick, got on a plane, went up there, did the interview, lucked out, and got the job. I know I really lucked out because I told off the boss the morning I got the call saying at the lumber place, the morning that I got the call saying, "Hey, we want you up here in Wisconsin." So I moved up, and that was 30 years ago, and I spent about a decade working on comics related things, on the reporter side, on the magazine side, and then on the book publishing side. I did a big book series called the Standard Catalog of Comic Books. I also ran a magazine called Scry, which was the card game magazine, collectible card games like Magic and Star Wars and Star Trek and all of that. So I had this sort of peripheral connection to all these things. And then I got the chance about 10 years in to write for Marvel, and that led to me getting a year's worth of stories on Iron Man. Iron Man led to me getting Star Wars. It was actually 20 years ago. This last August that I met the editor of the Star Wars line in Oregon, and said, "Hey, can I offer you guys a fill-in issue sometime when somebody doesn't hit their deadline or something?" And that one issue led to me getting the Knights of the Old Republic series, which ran 57 issues in various incarnations. And then that led to me getting prose for Random House. And so I end up doing both comics and novels. And the Star Wars side of things, I most recently did a novel called The Living Force, which came out in the month of April of this year, and I also did a bunch of Star Trek novels in between, and most recent one of those is Star Trek: Strange New Worlds: The High Country. And my same editor on Star Wars asked if I wanted to do the Batman project that we're talking about today.
Nice. Before we get into like the specific question on Batman, can you tell us a little bit about your like writing process? Do you lock yourself, in a room and just sit down and crank it out, or are you like tell us about that?
Well, since almost everything I do is licensed fiction, so it's for somebody else. It's somebody that's got to approve the outline before I do anything. So everything starts with an outline, and the outline is by far the hardest part, because in particular, if you're doing a book that has a mystery to it, and of course Batman Resurrection has a significant mystery arc, and I've had others as well where you have to actually have all of those beats figured out. You really can't get into a corner where I'll figure out later how certain things happen. What'll happen is you might figure out how to do an action scene later or something like that, or you'll figure out, all right, it's been a while since we've seen Bruce Wayne, or it's been a while since we've seen the hero of the book, and we need to get some action in here or something like that. And that's the kind of decision making that I will do on the fly. But one of my other things is, in addition to having a lot of stories with I mentioned the mystery, I have a lot of turnabouts or surprises or shock revelations. I do a lot of chapters in my books, so there are a lot of chances for cliffhangers and for the events to turn around on us. And that I think really helps the narrative, bringing people through the book, particularly if they're listening on audiobook. It's much more kinetic and dynamic. But my other sort of I guess trademark, if I have one, is I do the big set piece or the big action scene where I will say, I don't care what I do as long as I get, in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, I've got a battle between an alien force on horseback, a wagon train, and flying airships. And also we throw in the Napoleonic Navy. So, and I'm like, okay, I know it's gonna take half the book to set this up, but I'm gonna have this moment. And I want to do this thing. And so I tend to have that. It's like, how do I get these moments? And sometimes they're character moments, as opposed to something, really sprawling and big like that. But no, I've got some real Battle of the Five Armies stuff that I've done, and that you got to put the pieces in place.
For sure.
Awesome. And again, Batman Resurrection, it's out now, so pick it up at your local bookstore or online. It is fantastic. We've Steven and I both read it. If you're a Batman fan, you're gonna love this book. So, continuing on, moving into Batman, John, you'd spoken the acknowledgement at the end about how remembering back to when you saw the Batman from 1989 in theaters. Talk about the experience a little bit and just kind of how that's resonated and stayed with you throughout the years.
Well, I think that for many people in Generation X, their first exposure to Batman would have been Adam West. Would have been the TV show, which was on in reruns when I was a kid. And the cartoons that they had were a little more serious, but still, it was very, very campy. And because that had been the last real, mass experience for everybody involving superheroes or comics. That I think kind of imprinted on the pop culture in terms of the general public and what they thought about comics. We did have a couple of Superman movies in there that were more serious, but then they go the other way almost immediately with Superman 3 and 4. And Superman 4 was the most recent movie that had superhero movie that had come out by the time of Batman 89. And it was just common that when you would have somebody in a civilian publication, anything from your local paper to the New York Times, if they're talking about comics being, the comics that are coming out today are different than they were. They're more serious. They're more active. They're adult themes. You would still have Biff, Pow, Bam in the headline. Comics are growing up, and it was very much, I think, an anchor around the necks of a lot of fans, myself included. Because we didn't feel like people got what we were into or why we were into these things, and particularly as Generation X, my readers are aging, and the baby boomers are still in comics. They're running comic shops. People are just not understanding why. And so when we approached the Batman movie in '89, this is thanks to Michael Uslan, who gets the rights to the Batman movies and works with producer Benjamin Melniker to try to actually get something out there. And it's a long fight. And in that process, we wind up finally with Tim Burton directing and Michael Keaton starring. There is in the fan press at the time, which, Comics Buyer's Guide coming out weekly was the closest thing we had to an internet. We had people write again, saying, "Oh my gosh, this was the Pee Wee Herman movie guy. This is Beetlejuice over here, Mr. Bomb. This is not going to work." And to their credit, Don and Maggie in the magazine were saying, "No, guys, have more faith than that." Michael Keaton, of course, had been in, I think Clean and Sober, and also, they trusted, Uslan and they trusted, Tim Burton's quirkiness to come up with a different angle on this sort of thing. And so, once we get the trailer, and people are seeing the machine guns on the Batmobile, and that trailer ends with just the logo, and no other words. We're the emblem, we're going, okay, this is a new angle. The emblem starts turning up everywhere. It is the most successful, I think, advertising image in movie history, because it's just everywhere and people are putting it on their bodies and everything for too long. And we get the commercials with Jack Nicholson laughing, and we're like, okay, this is something else. And again, as I said, I was editing my campus paper during the summer session, heading into the fall, and I assigned myself, because there was nothing really going on that summer, I assigned myself the job of also doing movie reviews. '89 was a spectacular summer for movies. It starts with Indiana Jones and the King and the Last Crusade. It goes on through Star Trek V, Ghostbusters 2, License to Kill, Lethal Weapon 2. All of these things are in there, and Batman. And I show up at Batman about 5 hours early, just to get the ticket. It's Thursday night, the preview night. This is in Knoxville, Tennessee, at a mall, and I hang around the mall for a while, come back, and by the time I get back, half an hour before the thing opens, everybody is lining up to get in, and they're all in costume. And I had never seen this before, because even in Star Wars, I did not. That was just not a thing at that point yet. There were people in Joker makeup. This one group of people brought a black bed sheet that they draped over the seats, and apparently they had holes popping up through it, so it looked like they were wearing a collective cape. And the music starts, and we see pounding music there, and people are cheering at every name, and the film we go immediately to the visual of Gotham City, designed by Anton Furst. The first line in the picture is from Prince on a passing car radio. "I have seen the future," is his line, and wow, we're just gone. We're in this different place, and by the end of the film, which again ends, it ended shockingly. What happens to the Joker? Nobody was prepared to see that happen in a franchise picture, and part of it was because the rules didn't exist yet. We got to make sure that we can get everybody back for the next one. That wasn't there, but also part of it was just Tim Burton. And we get to that last scene with the music climbing, and the camera climbing up the building to see Batman on the rooftop looking at the bat signal, and people just explode cheering. And I remember thinking to myself, I got a tear in my eye at this point, and I remember thinking to myself, and I wrote it. I wrote it in my review, and then later reviews after that, and later things after that. The line, and I put that line in the acknowledgments, was that this movie has just redeemed comics, not just Batman, but comics in the popular culture. And you have several years there following that where you've got movies like, even though Darkman isn't a comic book movie, it feels like one. But you've got The Rocketeer, which is a serious effort. You've got Dick Tracy, which production wise has the same symbol kind of a thing with the posters. You have these attempts that probably would not have gotten greenlit before. I think the next comics movie after this one was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was again done semi-seriously enough that and also you're thinking about it at the time, we're just 6 years from this being a comic book that sold 2,000 copies and that was advertised in the back of Comics Buyer's Guide. That was it. And here's a feature film for the Turtles. And you're able to get something within 5 years. I consider the original Crow to be a masterpiece. And again, the Crow is incredibly violent, and it's incredibly stylistic.
Yeah.
And there is no Crow going to theaters without Tim Burton's Batman.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And things do sort of pendulum goes back over the next few years, but then it comes again, and we get people were primed. They knew what they wanted at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was, and you're absolutely right. There was a lot of pressure on that film to legitimize the medium in a way. And when you mentioned Superman 4, and it's still Christopher Reeve, who's amazing, but I think objectively most people would say 4 isn't the same movie as 1 or 2, right? And
oh gosh, no, and he would have said that too. I mean, and again, it's about what the studios thought, what the money thought, and then what they thought that the audience thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's again why under Schumacher we get this move back toward camp. It's in part because part of the audience and really it's the part that wanted to see a family friendly Batman Returns, so that they could move more McDonald's toys. You got to remember that first picture, some people didn't know what to expect. They didn't know whether to bet on it yet. The license for fast food for Batman was Taco Bell, which is like probably the sixth or seventh down the list that you would probably gone for.
Sure, at that point, right?
Yeah.
At that point, oh yeah, but it was by the second movie, it was much more Madison Avenue, much more expected to be family friendly in certain ways, and they forget that it's a Tim Burton movie. With Christopher Walken and Danny DeVito in it, and anyway, but yeah, it's as I say, that the pendulum swings, but this took us to a new level.
Well, and like a follow-up question for you, because that movie had pressure on it for sure. Did you feel pressure because this is taking Batman into a bit of a new medium too, right? Like it's had a huge run in comics, obviously forever, films, but now novel form. Like, did you feel a little pressure taking that on?
Well, this is another case. Just using that previous metaphor of the another level. There have been novels about comics and comics characters forever, and some of them have been very serious enterprises. Greg Rucka did Batman No Man's Land, a hardcover, basically retelling his comics, almost more than 20 years ago at this point. But the problem is for many years, the audience of comic book or superhero novels was really a subset of the comic book reading audience. It was never really much beyond that. And over the last 5 or 10 years, we've had, young adult hardcovers that have been takes on, Wonder Woman and various other characters that, assume a certain level of understanding that didn't come from the comics, but came from the movies. But they still weren't quite in the movie universe or anything like that. When this was offered to me, first of all, I had no idea to even ask for this. I was astonished that it was even a possible thing. You could sublicense just these 2 movies, and we're going to base what we're doing on this. But what we're doing here, we're trying to do a project that will kind of go up to the next orbit and say, this is not just a comic book novel. This is a movie novel as well. And then I'm just always trying to make things feel like, it could be a good mainstream mystery as well. I mean, it could be these are books that I've always felt belonged in the front of the store with they're franchise fiction, but how is that any less formulaic than the 25th Patterson novel or other franchise novel? You just name one. I love the Lincoln Lawyer novels, but honest to goodness, it's the same thing. It's without a TV show or without a movie. And of course, now there have been movies and TV shows. So, where does one stop and one begin anymore? I guarantee you the movies for a lot of those novels are selling more books than the books are selling movie tickets. So anyway, I'm very much aware of this is particularly being the first thing out of a new licensing agreement with DC and Warner and Random House, that this is a big deal. And I have to say that I was ready. I even in my column from 35 years ago, at the end of it, there's kind of a bit where I'm saying, okay, I've got questions. There are these moments at the end of the film that I don't quite understand, and that make some possibilities available if you wanted to do something with them. And I wrote in a a comics buyer's guide piece, just in response to a letter at some point. Yeah, if they ever want to call me, I know how to bring the Joker back from the dead. And this is 20 odd years ago. I was like, okay, let me try that first. And let me make this the passion project for real. And I want to write the book that I wanted to see in December of 1989, that there was no way in the world they could have possibly written, because that's not how tie-in fiction worked. You could write a novel, but it wasn't based on even the novelization is not based on the final version of the movie. You just don't have everything yet, and you absolutely don't have knowledge of what's in Batman Returns. Right. They wouldn't have even known there would have been a Batman Returns in order to get a novel out for Christmas '89. But I'm pretending there was, and so my book, I'm actually able to say, okay, Max Schreck, he's still alive as of this point in between the two movies. What did he think of the Joker? What did that do to his apple cart? What does he think of Batman at this point? What did Selina Kyle think? What did what do Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Dent think about this, vigilante, which the city has embraced? Well, now they got to figure out a way to work with them. And how do you make sure that evidence stands up and civil liberties and the things that they've got to be concerned about in their job are respected and then of course you have the Batman is having the same issues of in the past he was doing everything on his own without cooperation from the authorities. Well, how does him having cooperation change his working habits? And then I just some stuff that I always wanted to think about as well. I'm real big on logistics. I'm real big on how does that work? And that doesn't mean that I explain every contraption or whatever, but I do pose situations where he's near the trouble, but his costume isn't. Or he's near the trouble, but the Batmobile isn't. We know from the maps, and I decided not to do a map of Gotham City because I realized it was just too hard. But I'd done maps in my last Star Wars novel, my last Star Trek novel, so I really looked at it. But I was like, okay, this is just this is too big a reach, and I could get it so wrong. And but even so, it's plain to anybody who watches the movie that Gotham City is here and Wayne Manor is way up there, and all of his stuff is way up there, and the trouble is down here. And does he pay the tolls on the bridges? Anyway, it doesn't get that silly, but I do have questions. And one of the fun things about this format, the prose format, is we can actually look at that. This is not a case like the novelization where there is no room for anything but what's on screen. I mean, he does a little embellishment to fill in blanks in places, and I use some names from it that he came up with, that Craig Shaw Gardner came up with. But here, this is much more like a 6-episode season of a TV series.
I was thinking that while I read it too.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way too.
Yeah, and it's and if there's anything where people go, well, this doesn't feel like the movie, well, it can't possibly. Because it would be a half the size, and to use the medium to its advantage, we want to actually have a scene where Bruce Wayne and Alfred are at breakfast at 2 p.m.
That's the thing, like this. I'm glad it didn't feel like the movie. Like the spirit of it's certainly there, right? But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
we're able to do things with the characters that you can't do in a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So you mentioned earlier, like the turning in the outline, and you said you had an idea for what you wanted the book, like if it came in December of '89. How much of the creative freedom do you have? How many voices from like Warner Brothers or DC are sticking their hand in the pot, I guess, for lack of a better word? How much input do they have, or is it all from you?
My editor, Tom Holler, he was also my editor on Living Force. Very much a close collaborator in terms of what the outline should be, and then the and then moments we want to hit, moments we want to amplify. He came up with or worked with us. Or work with the graphics department, for example, because we have a device, a visual device in the book, a particular character's secret notes, and they did a design for them where it's on tractor feed paper because the dot matrix, and we actually worked to make sure it was a dot matrix font that looked like what would have existed back then. And so we're doing that. We're working with the licensor at the staff at Warner Brothers, and we also looped in. Made sure to have time to talk with the folks at DC who really had kind of struck the first blow in doing something here with this sub license with Batman '89. They're the ones that really carved that out and said, we've already done Batman '66. Let's do these comics miniseries by Sam Hamm, who with Warren Scarn was the screenwriter, and then also and the artist is Joe Quinones. Joe is the artist of behind the covers of many of my Star Wars Knight Errant comics from like 14 years earlier. This is just all cool, and we talked to them as well to make sure that we're not stepping. It's I haven't absolutely said that these projects are in the same continuum necessarily, but I am mindful of what they're doing, and you are not going to see in anything I do, for example, Harvey Dent, played by Billy D. Williams, becoming Two-Face, because they did that already in the comics. And they're set afterward, and I'm deliberately set in between the two pictures.
Yeah. No, so what were the challenges like writing a story set between those two films?
I had a number of things that I needed to do. First of all, I needed to make sure that any character that I wanted to use really was still alive. So even though I had seen Batman in the theater in 1989 12 times, and I saved all the tickets, I still did not know for an absolute fact, for example, there's a character that appears very early. The Joker's henchman, Lawrence, the guy with the boombox, Lawrence. Yep. He has no lines in the movie, but everybody knows who he is immediately. And I wanted to do a thing showing what had happened to the remnants of the Joker's crew. And I just needed to make sure, am I absolutely sure he lived? And so, I'm going through the movie frame by frame. And it's like, he goes through the floor of the cathedral belfry, but we could pretend that there's a floor beneath. There's really just the boxer where you're just like, okay, he didn't live. Because he goes all the way down, and unless he catches something, I don't know. At any rate, again, it's the Golden Age Batman where people get really badly hurt that he's riffing off of. That's the other thing as well. I needed to make sure that what I did was consistent with the aesthetic that is in the movies. Tim Burton is taking the Golden Age Batman, the Batman with a gun, more or less, and he's bringing it forward to 1989. But stylistically, Gotham City has this metropolis look from Fritz Lang from eons ago. From the 10s or 20s or whenever that came out, and we have the fashions looking 40ish. The fedoras and things like that going in a lot of places.
Mhm.
But then we've got the cars and everything. We have sort of a mishmash of technologies that it's clear that only Batman has the best computers. It's clear that only Batman has this stuff. But yeah, I mean, but it's not uncommon for basically a player character, if you want to call him that, like Alexander Knox, to have a tape recorder, whereas everybody else you see scribbling on paper and typing with a typewriter. And so I wanted to, without explaining that, I needed to actually make sure that whatever I was doing, I was Googling a lot. Did this thing exist before 1989? When did this particular procedure change?
Mhm.
Also, a thing that was just different for me is, okay, I've written 4 Star Wars novels, depending on how you count, 8 Star Trek novels, but I've never done anything set on Earth in a modern era or semi-modern era. And so I'm having to do I get dragged down a lot of rabbit holes when I'm researching. And on this book, it was stuff like, okay, what are the procedures when there's a fire in a building? What do the firemen do? What are the procedures in an autopsy? What are how much does a traffic signal weigh? All sorts of things that I was using. How does a sewer system work? And how do they separate the drain water or storm water from sewage? This is all stuff that I never had to care about before. And so, yeah, I have a very interesting Google search history in that stretch.
John, what made you said, obviously it's a lot of fun writing, between the two movies, right? What made you want to continue with Smilex as sort of a theme and a threat in this story?
Okay. I mentioned keeping to the aesthetic of what Tim Burton showed on screen. One of the things we see in Batman Returns is there's no supers. There are no metahumans. There are no superpowers. There are things that defy physics. Cars are not able to make the kind of turns that you can see in that film. And you see a few things that are fantastic. The shields on the car, that's a little more fantastic than even 1989. And you see with Smilex that it can cause more or less instantaneous changes to somebody's face and somebody's body. And so as I was approaching this and looking at our villain that we introduce, or actually the villain that we bring in from the Rogues Gallery first,
Yes.
that appears first in the book, whether he is a villain as people expect or not, they'll have to find out. But I was looking at Clayface, and I said, okay, this is going to have to be the Golden Age Clayface in a sense, where that guy was an actor. But I decided I wanted to do 2 things. First of all, I wanted to make him more tragic. So he's not somebody who was famous to begin with. We do get the sort of aging actor in this book, but he's more of a nemesis to Basil Karlo. And then I needed this thing to happen to him. And again, we knew that we could not have Clayface be the shambling mound that you see in the picture, or rather in the comics, and in the cartoons. He can't be that because we didn't see anything like that in the movies. Like, pause just 1 second, let you know that we just had huge thunder out here. So if you're
good.
Didn't even hear it.
okay, well, if you see the lights go kaboom or whatever, that's what's going on. Back to this. So I wanted to actually come up with something in this novel as a mechanism to create Clayface that would be something that existed in the movies. And it was something where I also looked at the movie and I said, this thing that has happened here in this first movie, this chemical weapons attack on a major city on the eastern seaboard, and who knows how far out it went. That's a pretty big deal, and they might not get over that in a month or a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me an opportunity to show Bruce Wayne at work as well, because in the Burton verse, if you want to call it that, in Tim Burton's world, Michael Keaton is not he's not pretending to be a playboy. He is, he is either intentionally or not appearing absent-minded a lot of the time. He's distracted a lot. He's absent from a lot of things that he probably should go to, but he's also an active member of the civic community. They expected to see him at Harvey Dent's dinner at the beginning of the first movie. He is there in the offices of Max Schreck, saying, "Yeah, we're not going to let you build this power plant." And the mayor and I see eye to eye on it, I think is the line, which again indicates that he is somebody who is trying to do things as Bruce Wayne that Batman alone cannot. And so that's something where I felt that Smilex. Also, there is a big element here of the specter that the movie casts over Bruce Wayne's character too, because the revelation that we get at the end of that film, Jack Napier, having been connected to the deaths of his parents, that didn't seem to me like something he could walk away from, Pat. And it also raises the question: is why is he still doing this then? And that's a question that Alfred asked, and a question that Vicky Vale asked as well.
Yeah. Let's change topics a little bit. Just what are some of the challenges in general for writing novels set in these huge franchises, whether it be Star Wars, Star Trek, and now Batman?
Well, I think the main deal is to match the voice, match the experience, match the feel of it. To a degree, one of the reasons I wasn't as concerned with landing this when I started was that I'm practiced as a mimic in terms of I can visualize a scene and I can come up with dialogue that people will say feels like the characters. I had the actress that played Hera in the Rebel show say she felt like I really caught her voice in the New Dawn novel for Star Wars, and I had never heard her voice. But that was a case of preparation where I worked with the studio. I had materials from them. I had a notion of what this character would be. But when I've actually heard the voice, yeah, I'm usually able to get that going in the theater of the mind and let you have it. The trick with new characters that we haven't heard yet, in something like this, you can actually do sort of a mental casting. So there is in this novel, there's a sage professor character, and for that professor, I imagine that Tim Burton probably would have cast Christopher Lee And so that was something where it was just already in my ear the whole time. And yeah, so that is the real challenge, is just making sure that the work rhymes with whatever the source material is.
Cool.
For sure.
Well, John, I got to sneak one Star Wars question in before we move into our rapid fire questions. Do you have a favorite Star Wars era to write? And what character, if any, is your favorite?
Yeah.
Well, my favorite era is whatever I happen to be writing at the time, because I find something interesting about it. I never thought I would have enjoyed writing in the prequel era, but the Living Force, that was a lot of fun. Because at every time, whether it's Old Republic or I did the Canto Bight book as well. Whenever it is, there's a chance to do something different with different conditions, and different themes and different toys to play with. With New Dawn, I was able to deal with the rise of the Empire and I was able to get into what life was like on a Star Destroyer. With Living Force, I was able to get into the founding of the Republic Navy in a sense, so it's whatever I happen to be working in. I mean, obviously, if you have some place where you can actually spread out and do a lot of stuff, Knight Errant, that was a case where I had 25 years to do whatever I wanted with. Lost Tribe of the Sith, that was a whole planet that I could just go wild with, as long as the characters were where they needed to be, or the planet was where it needed to be, the society was where it needed to be in time for when those characters appear again in Fate of the Jedi. Character. I obviously I enjoyed writing Obi-Wan Kenobi and made sure I put him back in the Living Force. Qui-Gon was a lot of fun to write in that book as well. I've only written Luke and Leia and the droids once, and that was for a comic book I did for IDW a few years back. Still have never written Han or Orlando at all, but I've got my Star Trek Picard Rogue Elements novel is basically about Star Trek's version of Han Solo. So I got to try to do that over there.
Very cool. Well, hey, we have some rapid fire questions. This is just a chance when we do this for audience just to get to know you a little bit. So we want to hear just some of your favorites. So what do you do to relax and unplug?
I've spent way too much time on playing video games on Steam. I used to be I told you I edited the card game magazine Scry, but the kind of gamer I was really a war gamer. So Avalon Hill was my thing. Problem is, those kind of games are really complicated and really you need a lot of time, a lot of space that I don't have. And so I probably got 1,600 hours in on both Civilization 5 and 6, and then the 4 before it, and 7 is coming out next year.
So you're excited for that.
But I tend to play games where there's no narrative. I don't like being led through a role-playing game, in part because I already do stories, and I'm always looking at ways to undermine them. So I own a pretend trucking fleet in American Truck Simulator, for example. I'm out there doing rescues in the woods in SnowRunner, driving a big Russian Jeep. The current game that I'm really enjoying, Steam has a game in early release right now called News Tower. And you actually run a newspaper in the 1930s, and
That's really cool.
Yeah, and it is a lot of fun. I mean, it's a sim style game, but they actually have captured a lot of the decisions that you would make if you were in that job.
Nice. How about your favorite comfort food?
Oh dear Lord. Well, I'm getting off of popcorn, so I can't do that. Oh, comfort food. Well, I would probably way too much chocolate. That's for sure.
Okay, that's fair. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie of all time. Yeah, everybody expects me to say, Star Wars or Star Trek or Batman or something like that. I think it's a toss up between and obviously there's different kinds of favorites, but I was really high on Contact as basically the best pure science fiction movie, based in science. I was really big on. I think that Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. That's the Patrick O'Brien novels back there. The Napoleonic Navy movie. I think that's just outstanding. But there's just a lot of movies though, and that you'll watch again and again and again, and just whenever they happen to be on, you'll pick them up, and it's Real Genius, if that shows up at any point, can't stop watching that. Nice. Yeah, War Games, you name it, all those kinds of things.
Any new movie you've seen this year that you really like?
I haven't been out to see a movie since I think Indiana Jones 5.
What did you think of that?
I enjoyed it. It was it actually addresses archaeology in a way that some of the other films don't. It expresses why, what he wants out of it, the way it ends is very it was very much a shock ending, but I liked it, and I was cool with it. I mean, obviously it's there are whole elements of it that are it's harder to do one of these pictures now when the actor is where the actor is, but no, I thought the opening sequence on the train, I saw that in one of those. That was in Miami Beach at a con. I saw that in one of those theaters where they have extended the visuals of the screen onto the walls on either side. I don't know. It's called like DX or something, like whatever they showed it in. And that was amazing because you see the train going around the bends, and you see you're able to look on either side of you and see the scenery on either side. Right. So that was pretty good. I just watched not in the theater, but I finally finished the Dune novel after trying for 40 years, and I never got past page 5 until I saw the movies. And I saw the movies this summer, and it's like, okay, well that explains what they were trying to do. I understand now.
I also read it after the movies. It's great,
same,
but yeah. How about favorite Star Trek film, and which series is your favorite?
Star Trek film, I go back and forth between Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, and Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. Star Trek 3, just because it zeroes in on the family and the base group of characters, and that they're willing to throw over the entire Star Trek. I think Peter David said this, that Star Trek, the original series, was about the characters. Star Trek: The Next Generation, when it began, at least, it was about Starfleet. It was about Star Trek. It was about that, and then it later changed and became more personal. But no, Star Trek 6. I those two movies. I did the Star Trek Prey trilogy, basically, riffing on those two movies. Likewise, my Picard novel, again, riffing on Star Trek 6. 6 is 6 lands, with its Cold War story, right when I'm in grad school for Soviet studies after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So that really just sort of rang the right bells there.
Which captain is your favorite?
Which captain is my favorite? Riker is the most fun to write as a captain, and we don't get much of him. But when I wrote my first Star Trek story, I said, give me your Titan series. Let me have Riker, because he just during the opposite of jumping the shark is growing the beard, and the moment where, and I was watching it regularly at the time, the moment where Next Gen really sort of takes off and becomes a new thing, is Best of Both Worlds, where he just says, okay, fire. We're gonna do what we've got to do. And yeah, sometimes you get the mayor, sometimes the mayor gets you. I just like his approach to things.
Okay. Which Star Wars movie is your favorite?
Empire is probably at the peak period for my fandom. The golden age is 12, as they say. That was when I was absolutely the most hyped up about it, and buying all the figures and buying all the comics and buying all the trading cards. And so I didn't see it as many times as I would have liked, because back in those days I didn't have a car.
Yeah, for sure. One final question for you. Our team is full, and there are plenty of people out there too that I'm sure have the same aspirations, but our team is full of people who dream of having your career someday and being a writer. And so if you could give, any advice to an aspiring writer, what would it be?
I would say write anything. This was 35 years ago, but I was hitting a deadline every day. I was hitting deadlines every day. I was communicating with people. That was something I wrote that was fun, but there were articles that I wrote that weren't. I was writing about lawsuits, and I was writing about student protests, and I was writing about just a wide variety of things. And with every one of them, I was learning to communicate with readers. I was being seen. So back in my own, when I was writing my own stories for myself, I did have a phase where I was doing fanzines and mini comics, mm-hmm. but still a very small number of people were reading those things. Right. The experience of having an idea, writing it on paper, and then having 20,000 copies of it on campus the next day, that was a big deal for me as a writer. I got over a lot of the stage fright quick, and I think that's what the writers today want to have. They need to actually be writing for other people, where they're getting feedback. They're getting exposed. Fan fiction, does do this. Fan fiction does not help one get a job doing what I'm doing. You can't publish that. But writing for magazines led to me getting to write for a comics magazine. A magazine about comics, and then that led to me getting to write for a comic book, and that led to all these other steps. There's no one way in. A lot of the ways in, the particular way that I came in, that magazine, there are no magazines anymore, but there are blogs and other things.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And John, it's a pleasure and honor to have you on the show with us. And the book is Batman Resurrection, out now. Check it out. It is absolutely fantastic, except between the 89 Batman and 92's Batman Returns. If you're a Batman fan, you're going to love this story. So thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time.
I do appreciate it. People can find more about the book and can pre-order it through my website, farawaypress.com, where I've also got essays on all my previous works. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads as John Jackson Miller, one word. I am on I'm on Twitter as JJM Faraway. And if this is coming out the week of the novel coming out, I do have a launch event October 15th in Appleton, Wisconsin at the Barnes & Noble. Then go immediately to New York Comic Con, where I'll be signing it every day at the writer's block there, and also at the Penguin Random House booth. And then the following week, the last weekend in October, I've got events in 3 different Barnes and Nobles in Chicago. And then I wrap up the month, the big month at book release month at Twin Cities Con in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I am hoping to see you there because I'm close to that. So
Oh, very good. Where are you at?
So I'm in just about an hour north of Minneapolis. So
Okay. Oh, very good. Well, I know that area.
yep. So fantastic. Well, thank you again so much. And
Yes, thank you.
Yep. The book is amazing. So check it out.